Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. Cal McAllister's boots crunched against the frost-covered floor of Titan Station's outpost as he trudged back toward his habitat pod. Alone again. It had been 5 years since he accepted the position of station maintenance tech, hoping to leave behind Earth's chaos for the vast, unrelenting silence of Saturn's largest moon. Here, time was measured in survival cycles, repairing oxygenators, recalibrating radiation shields, and sending weekly check-ins to Earth. Not that anyone back home cared. His last communication had gone unanswered. Cal dropped his toolkit by the door, his breath fogging the air inside his Spartan living quarters. The outpost's AI companion Milo chirped to life. "Welcome back, Cal. Routine environmental checks show." "Not now, Milo," Cal muttered, heading to the kitchenette. Another evening of freeze-dried stew and staring into the void. But something changed. Milo interrupted the silence. "Cal, an anomalous energy signature has been detected 3.2 kilometers northeast of this location. Shall I disregard?" Cal froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. "Energy signature? What kind?" "Unknown. Highly localized. Life sign probabilities below 1%. He debated ignoring it. Likely another piece of orbital debris crashing into Titan's endless dunes. But curiosity, long dulled by isolation, flared. He grabbed his gear. Discovery in the snow. The trek was grueling. Titan's atmosphere was an oppressive haze of nitrogen and methane, and his suit's oxygen scrubbers strained to keep him breathing. The wind howled, lashing icy particles against his visor. The energy signal led him to a shallow crater. As Cal approached, he spotted something half buried in frost. A sleek craft no larger than a shuttle pod, its hull pulsing faintly with cyan light. "Holy hell," Cal whispered. He hadn't seen alien tech since his military days, and nothing like this. As he circled the craft, the sound of faint static reached his comms. "Is someone in there?" he asked aloud, feeling foolish. The reply was faint but unmistakable. A weak, wavering voice speaking in a language he didn't understand. Cal's heart pounded as he manually pried open the pod's hatch. Inside, cradled among shattered components and glowing biogel, was a being unlike anything he'd seen. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, her eyes half-lidded, glowing faintly violet. She was humanoid but clearly alien, with delicate, gossamer-like membranes stretching from her arms to her sides. She was dying. A desperate choice. Cal's instincts kicked in. He wasn't a medic, but his training covered basic triage. He scanned her with his portable analyzer, though its human-centric database provided little insight. What he could tell, her breathing was shallow, her vitals erratic, and whatever her biology relied on to sustain life was depleting fast. "I've got you," he murmured, gingerly lifting her out of the wreckage. She weighed almost nothing. The journey back to the station was agonizingly slow. Cal fought the storm, shielding her fragile body from the wind. Every few steps he glanced at her, wondering if she'd still be alive when they reached safety. "Hang on," he whispered. "Just a little farther. First contact." Once inside, Cal rushed to the habitat's medical bay, a glorified closet with rudimentary equipment. He laid the alien girl on the diagnostic table. "Milo, scan her vitals and extrapolate care protocols," he ordered. "Analyzing," Milo replied. A long pause. "Partial match with known carbon-based lifeforms. Oxygen levels critical. Temperature requirement, 312 Kelvin. Administering compatible oxygen now." Cal worked feverishly, fashioning a makeshift oxygen mask from his suit's reserves and adjusting the med bay's heat emitters to her needs. Slowly her breathing stabilized. Then her eyes opened. She stared at him, violet irises glowing faintly. Her lips moved, producing soft, musical tones that Cal couldn't decipher. "It's okay," he said, holding up his hands. "I'm trying to help you." The alien tilted her head as if analyzing him. Then she reached out, a trembling, graceful motion, and touched his forehead. A jolt of warmth flooded his mind, accompanied by fragmented images and feelings. A ship adrift in space. A desperate flight. Pain, fear, and gratitude. Her voice entered his mind, tentative but clear. "Help me, please." Cal staggered back, the mental connection severed as she slumped unconscious again. "A greater mystery." "Milo," Cal said, trying to steady his voice. "Run a full diagnostic on her and the material I brought back from the crash site. I need to know what we're dealing with." As Milo processed the data, Cal sat by the alien girl, studying her features. She was injured, yes, but there was something else. Her presence felt profound, like she didn't belong here, or anywhere near Titan. Milo, what's the analysis? Subject is reliant on a bioluminescent compound for cellular energy. Her condition is deteriorating due to depletion of this compound. Can we synthesize it? Not without further samples. Warning: presence of exotic elements indicates technology and biology far beyond human capability. Cal clenched his fists. This wasn't just a random encounter. She was part of something bigger, something dangerous. As he looked at the alien girl again, he made a decision. Whatever it took, he would save her. Cal paced the habitat's cramped quarters, glancing every so often at the alien girl. She lay motionless on the diagnostic table, her silver skin reflecting the room's dim light. The makeshift oxygen setup hissed softly, keeping her alive. He hated how helpless he felt. Milo, he said, breaking the silence. What's the situation on her condition? Subject remains in critical but stable condition. Oxygen delivery and elevated temperatures are maintaining basic life support. However, the exotic compound required for full cellular function is unavailable. Cal ran a hand through his scruffy hair. What about the crash site? Anything there we could use? Analysis of debris revealed fragments of bioreactive gel. However, quantities are insufficient for synthesis or sustained use. Damn it, he muttered, slamming his fist on the counter. A faint sound drew his attention. He turned to see the alien girl stirring. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly violet. She struggled to sit up, her body trembling. Easy, Cal said, stepping closer. You're safe here. Her gaze locked onto his, and for a moment, the air seemed to hum with tension. She lifted a hand, delicate and trembling, and touched her temple, a silent gesture for him to do the same. Cal hesitated but complied, placing 2 fingers on his own forehead. The sensation hit like a surge of static electricity. Images and feelings poured into his mind. The girl's name, a soft musical tone he couldn't pronounce but felt like Era. Her ship, a sleek vessel ambushed in orbit by something massive and hostile. Her mission, a desperate attempt to flee carrying something important. Then a word emerged clearly in his thoughts. Save? Cal broke the connection, gasping. Era slumped back, visibly drained. I get it, he said quietly. You're in trouble and someone, or something, is after you. The threat revealed. As Era rested, Milo interrupted again. Cal, long-range sensors have detected an incoming vessel. What? He bolted to the console. A blurry readout displayed an object entering Titan's upper atmosphere. Unidentified craft approaching at sublight speed. Estimated time to arrival, 8 hours? Could it be a rescue ship? Negative. Energy signature matches no known human or allied configurations. Probability of hostile intent, high. Cal felt his pulse quicken. Whoever had attacked Era was coming to finish the job. Preparing for the worst. He turned to Milo. Can we fortify the outpost? This station is designed for environmental endurance, not combat scenarios. Defensive measures are minimal. Figures, Cal muttered, grabbing his toolkit. He didn't have much, a plasma cutter, an old mining laser, and a few EMP charges he'd cobbled together during long, lonely nights. But it would have to do. As he worked, Era watched him, her eyes following his every move. At one point, she struggled to sit up again, gesturing weakly at the debris he'd brought back from her ship. You want something from the wreck? Cal asked. She nodded faintly. He retrieved a small cylindrical device, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly. Era took it with trembling hands and pressed it to her chest. The device emitted a soft hum and her breathing steadied. What is that? Cal asked, but Era only managed a faint smile before falling back into a deep, exhausted sleep. First contact again. Hours passed. The unidentified craft drew closer, and Cal's nerves were fraying. Then the station's proximity alarm blared. Vessel has landed 1.7 kilometers from this location, Milo reported. Detected, multiple hostiles disembarking? Cal peered out the reinforced window. The storm had calmed, revealing the eerie glow of alien figures approaching the outpost. They were humanoid but encased in segmented armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Each carried weapons that crackled with dark energy. Cal's heart pounded. Milo, can we communicate with them? Establishing signal. A guttural, distorted voice filled the room. Human. Surrender the fugitive, and you will not be harmed. Cal glanced at Era. She stirred weakly, her eyes wide with fear. Yeah, that's not happening, Cal growled. The voice hissed with amusement. Your defiance is meaningless. Deliver her or be destroyed. The signal cut out. Holding the line. The first assault came minutes later. The aliens deployed a drone that buzzed toward the outpost, scanning for weak points. Cal activated an EMP charge, frying its circuits and sending it crashing into the ice. "That'll hold them off for a second," he muttered, but the aliens advanced, undeterred. He positioned himself near the main hatch, plasma cutter in hand. Through the window he saw 3 figures approaching. One raised a weapon and a bolt of energy struck the door, melting part of its surface. Cal fired the mining laser, the beam slicing through the thin atmosphere and forcing the aliens to scatter. Inside the habitat, Era stirred again. She reached for the cylinder device, holding it out toward Cal. "What am I supposed to do with this?" he asked, ducking as another blast rocked the station. She pointed at the device, then at herself, her expression urgent. "You're saying it's for you?" he guessed. She nodded. Realizing she was trying to help, Cal placed the device in her hands. Era closed her eyes, and the cylinder emitted a pulse of energy that enveloped her in a shimmering cocoon of light. Outside, the aliens hesitated, their movements faltering as the light grew brighter. A new ally. When the glow subsided, Era stood, weak but steady. Her wounds had partially healed, and her violet eyes burned with determination. Cal stared in awe. You're stronger now." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her thoughts brushing against his mind again. "Together. Fight." He nodded, gripping his plasma cutter tighter. "Let's finish this." As the aliens renewed their assault, Cal and Era stood side by side, ready to face the storm together. Cal's adrenaline surged as the reinforced door of the outpost groaned under the repeated impacts from alien energy blasts. Sparks flew and molten chunks of metal sizzled against the frosty floor. Era stood beside him, her gossamer membranes partially extended and glowing faintly, like shimmering battle flags in the dim light. "They're not backing down," Cal muttered, adjusting the makeshift power amplifier on his mining laser. "We'll have to hit them hard." Era met his gaze, her violet eyes narrowing in determination. She raised her hands and faint arcs of luminous energy crackled between her fingertips. "Well, that's new," Cal quipped, trying to mask his awe. A final explosion blew the door inward, sending shards of metal and frost flying. Cal shielded his face, then leveled his laser at the advancing aliens. The first alien stepped into view, its segmented armor gleaming like molten silver. Cal fired. The beam struck its chest, leaving a molten gash, but the creature barely flinched. Era didn't hesitate. She thrust her hands forward, and a pulse of violet energy erupted from her palms, slamming into the alien and sending it hurtling backward into its comrades. "They're not invincible," Cal said, grinning despite himself. "Strategic retreat." But for every alien they repelled, more poured in, their weapons spewing crackling bolts of dark energy that seared the walls. The outpost's oxygen recycler sparked and went dark, and an alarm wailed in protest. "Milo, status report," Cal shouted, ducking as a blast scorched the console behind him. "Environmental systems critically damaged. Oxygen reserves depleting. Structural integrity at 42%, Milo replied. "We can't hold this position," Cal said. Era nodded, her expression grim but resolute. She gestured toward the rear of the outpost, where the emergency rover was stored. Cal caught her meaning immediately. "You want to run?" She nodded again, but her thoughts brushed against his mind, adding clarity. "Escape. Regroup. Fight smarter." He sighed. "Fine. But I'm taking as many of these bastards with me as I can." The chase. They retreated to the rover bay, Era covering their escape with bursts of energy that lit up the narrow corridors. The aliens advanced relentlessly, their weapons carving molten streaks into the walls. As they reached the bay, Cal hit the release switch and the heavy door slammed shut behind them. "That'll buy us a few seconds," he said, climbing into the rover's cockpit. The vehicle was a hulking, six-wheeled beast designed for Titan's harsh terrain. Era climbed into the passenger seat, clutching the glowing cylinder device tightly. "Milo, remote lock the habitat systems," Cal ordered. Locking initiated. Detonating remaining EMP charges in 3, 2. The muffled thumps of explosions echoed through the station. The lights flickered, and the sound of alien weapons went silent for a brief moment. "Go!" Cal shouted, slamming the accelerator. The rover roared to life, its massive tires biting into the icy ground as it surged out of the bay and into the storm-ravaged expanse of Titan's surface. Into the wild. Titan's landscape stretched out before them, an endless sea of frost dunes and jagged ice formations under a hazy orange sky. The storm had subsided, but visibility was still poor, with methane fog curling around the rover like ghostly tendrils. Era glanced back, her expression tense. Cal followed her gaze and saw the faint, flickering lights of the alien pursuers in the distance. "They're fast," he said grimly. "Faster than this rust bucket." Era placed a hand on the cylinder and then on the rover's dashboard. The vehicle's systems hummed, and the speed indicator jumped. "Well, that's a neat trick," Cal said, gripping the controls tighter. The aliens drew closer, their sleek skimmers cutting through the fog like predatory shadows. Bolts of energy streaked past the rover, one grazing its rear axle. "Milo, divert power to the rear shield," Cal barked. "Shield's at 60%, Milo replied. Era extended her hands, and a shimmering barrier of violet light appeared behind the rover. The next volley of alien fire struck it and dissipated harmlessly. "Now we're talking," Cal whooped. The abyssal chasm. As they sped across the icy terrain, Cal's navigation system beeped a warning. "Massive drop-off ahead," Milo reported. Cal squinted through the fog and saw it. A vast chasm, its depths hidden in shadow. "We're running out of road?" Era leaned forward, her gaze sharp. She gestured toward the glowing cylinder and then toward the chasm. "You're kidding," Cal said. "You want me to jump that?" She nodded, her confidence unwavering. "Great," Cal muttered. "I always wanted to die on an alien moon." He floored the accelerator. The rover's engine roared and the vehicle barreled toward the edge of the chasm. Behind them, the alien skimmers closed in, their weapons tearing chunks of ice from the ground. "Hang on," Cal shouted. The rover hit the edge at full speed and launched into the air. For a heart-stopping moment, they were weightless, suspended over the abyss. Era clutched the cylinder, her energy flaring again. The violet glow enveloped the rover, propelling it farther than physics should have allowed. They hit the far side of the chasm with a bone-jarring thud, skidding across the ice. Behind them, the alien skimmers hesitated, then turned back. "They're not following," Cal said, panting. "Guess they weren't willing to risk it?" Era smiled faintly, though exhaustion was etched into her features. A moment's respite. They stopped near an ice ridge, the rover's engine idling. Cal leaned back, trying to catch his breath. "Milo, status? Oxygen reserves sufficient for 12 hours. Alien presence temporarily neutralized. Recommend immediate planning for long-term survival." "Yeah, thanks for the reminder," Cal muttered. Era slumped in her seat, the glowing cylinder dimming in her hands. Cal glanced at her, guilt gnawing at him. "You saved us back there," he said. "But you're burning yourself out doing it?" She looked at him, her thoughts brushing against his mind. "Together. Stronger." He nodded. "All right. No more running. Next time we fight on our terms." Together, they stared out into the storm, knowing the battle was far from over. The ice ridge loomed around them, jagged spires rising like frozen sentinels. Cal adjusted the rover's sensor array, scanning for any signs of pursuit. The scanner returned a reassuring blank. For now they were alone. Era stepped out of the rover, her movements still sluggish but purposeful. The gossamer-like membranes along her arms twitched faintly as she looked up at the orange-hued sky. Cal joined her, pulling his jacket tighter against the biting wind. "You think we've lost them?" he asked. Era tilted her head, her violet eyes narrowing. She reached out with one hand, palm open, and closed her eyes. A faint ripple of energy pulsed outward, invisible to the eye but felt in the pit of Cal's chest, like a distant hum. She shook her head, her expression grim. "Figures," Cal muttered. "We've got maybe hours before they find us again. We need a plan." Era nodded and gestured for him to follow. She led him to the base of the ridge, where she crouched and used her glowing fingertips to carve shapes into the ice. A new understanding. Cal watched as Era's makeshift diagram took shape. The symbols were alien, but the patterns reminded him of flowcharts or star maps. Era tapped one section, a cluster of lines and symbols, and then looked at him intently. "What is that?" Cal asked. "Your ship?" She shook her head and tapped the symbol again, then traced a line to a second set of symbols that resembled the segmented shapes of the alien attackers. "Something they're after?" Era nodded, her expression growing sharp with urgency. She pointed to herself, then to the glowing cylinder she carried, and then to the ridge they stood under. Cal frowned. "You're saying whatever they're after is here? Buried in the ridge?" She nodded again. "Well, that's just great," Cal said, rubbing the back of his neck. "So, not only do they want to kill us, but we're parked on top of the reason they're here." Era's expression softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. Her thoughts brushed against his mind once more. Hope. Strength. Together. Cal sighed. Yeah, I get it. No backing down. Digging for hope. They got to work. Era directed Cal to an outcropping at the ridge's base, where she used bursts of energy to melt through the thick layers of ice. Cal followed, his plasma cutter whining as it carved deeper into the frozen wall. What exactly are we looking for? Cal asked as the tunnel grew longer. Era paused, holding up her glowing cylinder, then pointed at the dark, jagged ice. Her thoughts flickered into his mind. Core. Power. Protect. Some kind of power source, Cal muttered. Great. Let's just hope it doesn't blow up the second we touch it. The tunnel suddenly opened into a small cavern. At its center was a crystalline structure, its jagged spires emitting a faint, pulsating glow. The light matched the violet hue of Era's eyes and the cylinder she carried. Era approached reverently, holding the cylinder toward the structure. The two objects pulsed in unison, and a soft hum filled the chamber. This is it, isn't it? Cal said, stepping closer. This is what they're after. Era nodded. A desperate gambit. Milo, Cal said, activating his wrist comm, analyze this thing. What are we dealing with? The AI hesitated before replying. Object appears to be a source of immense bioreactive energy, likely capable of powering advanced technology or sustaining lifeforms with compatible biologies. Warning, energy signature is detectable at long range. Hostiles will converge quickly. Of course they will, Cal muttered. So what's the play? We can't outrun them and we sure as hell can't take them all on. Era turned to him, her expression resolute. She gestured at the crystalline core, then at the cylinder, and then at herself. You're saying we use this, merge it with the cylinder and, what? You? Her thoughts confirmed it. Fuse? Amplify? Fight? That sounds like a suicide mission, Cal said, his voice rising. You're barely hanging on as it is? Era stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. She placed a hand over his chest and her thoughts came through again. Sacrifice. Survival. Hope. Cal clenched his fists. No. We'll figure out another way. Together. The final stand. Before Era could respond, the tunnel shook violently. Cal's scanner blared as the alien attackers closed in, their skimmers hovering just outside the ridge. They're here, Cal growled. Damn it, we need more time. Era stepped forward, placing the cylinder into the crystalline core. The two objects merged and a brilliant surge of light filled the cavern. The energy coursed through Era, making her stagger before standing taller, her silver skin now glowing like molten metal. Cal shielded his eyes. What are you doing? Era turned to him, her thoughts brushing against his mind one last time. Protect. Fight. Trust. She raised her hands, and the crystalline core unleashed a wave of energy that shot through the tunnel and out into the frozen landscape, striking the alien forces. Their skimmers exploded in bursts of violet light, and the attackers were thrown back like ragdolls. Aftermath. When the light faded, Cal stumbled forward, coughing against the lingering heat. Era knelt by the core, her glow dimmed but steady. You did it, Cal said, kneeling beside her. You stopped them? Era's gaze met his and her thoughts flickered weakly. Not over. Prepare. Cal helped her to her feet, his jaw tightening. Then we prepare. No more running. No more waiting. Next time we hit them first. Together they emerged from the cavern, their resolve hardened. The battle wasn't over, but they had something the enemy didn't: each other. The light of Titan's hazy sun filtered weakly through the methane fog as Cal and Era climbed back into the rover. Cal took a deep breath, trying to quell the buzzing in his chest left by the crystal core's massive energy discharge. Beside him, Era leaned against the seat, her glow faint but steady. You okay? Cal asked, concern etched in his voice. Era nodded slowly, though her movements were sluggish. Her thoughts brushed faintly against his. Time, short? You burned through a lot of energy back there, Cal said, glancing at the ridge they'd just left behind. But we bought ourselves some breathing room. Now we just need to figure out how to use it. A dangerous idea. The rover rumbled across the icy terrain, heading toward a distant signal. Cal had activated Milo's long-range sensors, hoping to locate any human or allied presence in the region. Milo, what's the status of that distress beacon you picked up earlier? Beacon is 37 kilometers southeast. Source: abandoned mining outpost. No current life signs detected, the AI replied. Cal frowned. Abandoned, huh? What about defenses? Outpost is equipped with dormant surface-to-air weapons and a depleted energy grid. Minor repairs may restore functionality. A grin spread across Cal's face. Perfect. If we can power up those defenses, we might stand a chance against the next wave. Era tilted her head, her curiosity evident. Cal tapped the rover's dashboard. We're going to turn that outpost into a fortress. And when those bastards come back, we'll be ready. Era's faint smile showed her approval, but her gaze drifted back toward the crystal core in the distance, a flicker of worry crossing her face. Fortifying the outpost. The mining station was a skeletal relic of humanity's initial forays onto Titan. Rusting towers leaned against the storm winds, and the main structure was half buried in frost. Cal parked the rover and stepped out, taking in the derelict surroundings. "Well," he said, clapping his hands, "it's not much to look at, but it'll do." Era followed him inside, her glowing fingertips lighting the dim interior. Cal got to work immediately, his mind buzzing with ideas. Milo, activate a diagnostic on the station's systems. Prioritize power grid and weaponry. Systems analysis complete. Repairs to primary generator and targeting array required. Estimated time, 4 hours with current resources. "Then we'd better get moving," Cal said. Era joined him, her energy abilities proving invaluable. Where Cal's tools failed against frozen or rusted components, Era's controlled bursts of heat and force cleared obstructions with precision. They worked in quiet rhythm, her calm focus complementing his gruff determination. Unexpected allies. As they repaired the station, Milo's sensors picked up a faint signal. "Cal, multiple unidentified objects approaching from the northeast. Speed indicates non-hostile intent." Cal's brow furrowed. "Non-hostile? On this rock? Who else would be out here?" Moments later, a battered shuttle descended into the mining station's perimeter, its landing thrusters kicking up clouds of methane frost. The hatch opened and 3 figures emerged, humans clad in survival suits, their faces weathered but determined. "Don't shoot," the lead figure called, raising his hands. "We're here to help." Cal kept his plasma cutter in hand but didn't raise it. "Help? From who?" The man stepped closer, pulling off his helmet to reveal a scarred but earnest face. "Name's Bennett. We picked up your EMP signal and figured someone was still breathing out here." Era stepped forward cautiously, her glowing form drawing the newcomer's attention. Bennett's eyes widened, but he didn't back away. "Well, that's new," he said, nodding at her. "What's the story?" "She's the reason those alien bastards are here," Cal said bluntly. "And the reason they haven't wiped us out yet?" Bennett's gaze hardened. "Then it sounds like we owe her." "What's the plan?" "A united front." With Bennett's team on board, repairs to the outpost sped up. His crew brought supplies, extra tools, and a wealth of experience. Together, they restored the generator, calibrated the targeting systems, and reinforced the perimeter with makeshift barriers. Era took a moment to rest, meditating near the glowing core of the generator. The humans worked around her, their initial wariness giving way to trust as they saw her determination to protect them. Bennett pulled Cal aside as they secured the last of the weapons. "You've got guts taking on these aliens with nothing but duct tape and hope," Bennett said. "But guts won't be enough. What's our end game?" Cal glanced at Era, who sat cross-legged, her energy flickering softly. "Endgame? We hit them where it hurts. Era's got power they can't handle. We just need to give her the chance to use it. And if it kills her?" Cal's jaw tightened. "Then we make damn sure it's worth it." The calm before the storm. By the time the sun dipped below Titan's horizon, the outpost was as ready as it would ever be. Turrets hummed with newly restored power, sensor arrays scanned the icy wastes, and the humans had armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find. Era approached Cal, her glow steady but subdued. She placed a hand on his arm, her thoughts brushing his mind, grateful. "Stronger. Together." He nodded, his voice low. "We'll get through this. One way or another." The night was eerily quiet, the calm before the storm. The humans stood watch, their breaths fogging in the freezing air. When the first sensor alarm blared, everyone tensed. "Here they come," Bennett said, gripping his rifle. Through the swirling methane fog, the enemy emerged, sleek alien skimmers and shimmering armored figures, their numbers far greater than before. Cal clenched his fists, his pulse steady despite the odds. "All right, people. Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with humans." Era stepped forward, her form glowing brighter than ever, as the humans prepared to defend their last stand. The sky above Titan's surface darkened, the cold wind howling as the alien invaders advanced. Cal, Bennett, and the rest of the ragtag crew stood side by side at the fortified outpost, rifles in hand, eyes scanning the icy horizon for movement. The alien skimmers glided through the methane fog like predators circling their prey. Their sleek, angular bodies reflected the dim light, casting long shadows over the frost-covered ground. Behind them, the foot soldiers, alien warriors clad in shimmering, metallic exoskeletons, moved with eerie precision, their weapons glowing with lethal intent. The tension in the air was palpable. For a moment, everything stood still as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "Milo, what's the status on the perimeter?" Cal muttered, his gaze fixed on the approaching enemy. "Perimeter secure," Milo replied through his wrist comm. "Enemy forces closing in. Estimated time to engagement, 10 minutes? Damn it," Cal muttered, adjusting his plasma rifle. "Alright people, this is it. Stick to the plan. Bennett, you and your team man the turrets. We'll hold the line here." Bennett gave a grim nod and sprinted to the nearest turret, joining his men in preparing the outpost's last line of defense. Era stood beside Cal, her presence calm but electric. She had already attuned herself to the energy pulses of the alien forces, her body humming with the raw power of the crystal core. She was ready, but Cal could feel the toll it was taking on her. "Era, you sure about this?" Cal asked, his voice low but filled with concern. Her violet eyes met his, unwavering. Her thoughts flickered in his mind. "We fight. Together?" Cal nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. She was pushing herself to the limit, and he wasn't sure how much longer she could keep it up. First contact. The silence was shattered as the first volley of alien fire streaked across the ice, hitting the outpost's reinforced walls with deafening impacts. The ground shook under the blast, sending cracks spiderwebbing through the frost. Cal raised his plasma rifle and fired back, the weapon's energy beam cutting through the fog. His shot struck one of the alien skimmers, but the vehicle's shields absorbed the blow with minimal effect. "Focus on the foot soldiers," Bennett shouted from his turret, unleashing a torrent of fire that tore into the advancing alien warriors. The blast hit their exoskeletons, but the armor barely registered the impact. The alien forces closed in, their weapons unleashing another barrage of energy blasts. One of Bennett's men was hit, his body convulsing as the blast tore through his suit. He collapsed with a scream, his rifle slipping from his hands. "Cover fire," Cal yelled, laying down a suppressing shot to keep the aliens at bay. But they were relentless. The foot soldiers advanced with brutal precision, their glowing weapons poised to strike. And just as Cal thought they might be overwhelmed, Era moved. Era's power unleashed. With a sharp intake of breath, Era raised both hands, her fingers crackling with violet energy. The ground around her trembled as she focused all her strength into one massive surge. A pulse of pure, concentrated power shot outward, slamming into the advancing aliens like a tidal wave. The first wave of soldiers was thrown back, their armor scorched and broken. Several skimmers exploded in a cascade of violet light, their power cores overloading in the wake of Era's attack. But the aliens were not so easily defeated. "More incoming," Bennett shouted as the remaining skimmers and soldiers regrouped. They'd learned quickly to adapt, and now they spread out in a coordinated formation, their weapons charging for another devastating strike. "We can't hold them off forever," one of Bennett's men shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "We don't need to hold them off forever," Cal snapped, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to make them regret coming here." Era's glowing form flickered, her power dimming as the strain began to take its toll. She staggered slightly, but she didn't falter. "Hold the line," Cal ordered. "We've got one more shot at this. The final gambit." Milo's voice crackled over the comms. "Energy reserves are at critical levels. I suggest immediate action to avoid system failure." Cal's mind raced as the alien forces closed in. The outpost was holding up, but for how long? And how much longer could Era keep up the relentless barrage of energy? "I've got an idea," Cal said, a plan forming in his mind. He turned to Bennett. "We're going to lure them into the kill zone. I need your turrets to fire in a pattern that'll lead them right into the center of the outpost. Can you do that?" Bennett hesitated, then nodded. "It's a gamble, but we've got no choice. We'll follow your lead." "Good. Get your men ready. I'll need you to cover Era when she makes the push." Bennett's crew scrambled to reposition the turrets, their eyes darting back and forth between the aliens and their defensive positions. They understood the gravity of the situation. "Here they come," one of Bennett's men shouted as the first wave of skimmers charged forward. The outpost defenses fired in sync, each turret letting loose a precise stream of energy fire. The alien forces responded in kind, their beams slicing through the air. But as the aliens advanced, they became predictable, and the turrets began to drive them toward the center of the outpost. "Now Era?" Cal shouted. Era, her energy flickering but still intense, extended her hands toward the alien forces. With a cry, she unleashed a massive pulse of power, her body glowing brighter than ever before. The energy wave slammed into the center of the alien ranks, ripping through their skimmers and soldiers with devastating force. The air around them shimmered as the core's power surged, and for a brief moment, the battlefield was consumed in a blinding flash of violet light. The aftermath. When the light faded, the battlefield was eerily still. Alien bodies lay scattered across the frozen ground, their once pristine armor shattered and smoldering. The remaining skimmers floated motionless, their power cores dimmed. Cal stumbled forward, his heart pounding as he surveyed the wreckage. He felt a surge of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a deep sense of dread as he turned toward Era. She was kneeling, her form flickering weakly. The strain of using the core's power had drained her, and her once vibrant glow had dimmed to a faint pulse. Era? Cal shouted, rushing to her side. Her violet eyes fluttered open and her thoughts brushed against his. We did it. Together. Cal took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. You're not done yet. We'll get you the help you need. But as the alien forces lay defeated, Cal couldn't shake the feeling that this victory had come at too great a cost. The battlefield was silent, save for the faint hum of the outpost's damaged systems and the wind howling across the icy plains. The alien forces, once an unstoppable tide, lay broken and scattered across the wasteland of Titan's surface. But the price of victory was etched in the air, heavy with loss. Cal knelt beside Era, her breathing shallow but steady. Her body, once glowing with radiant energy, was now weak, her silver skin dull. The crystal core had drained her, its power taking its toll. Her violet eyes flickered, focusing on him, a soft but determined gaze. You did it, Cal whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Era's lips parted in a faint smile, though it was weak, a shadow of the strength she had shown in battle. Her thoughts flickered through his mind, a final message. We fought. We won. Hope remains. Cal clenched his fists, feeling the weight of her words. Hope remains. But for how long? Milo, can you stabilize her? Cal called out, his voice tight with urgency. I'm analyzing, the AI responded quickly. Era's life signs are stable but energy levels are dangerously low. Immediate assistance is required to prevent total collapse of her biosystem. I'll do whatever it takes, Cal said, determination hardening his tone. He gently lifted Era, cradling her as best as he could. Bennett and his team approached, their faces drawn but relieved. They had fought hard and lost men, but the tide had turned in their favor. Now they had to make sure the victory didn't go to waste. What's the status? Bennett asked, his eyes scanning the horizon for any more threats. Nothing moving, Cal replied, his eyes still locked on Era. We need to get her back to the core. She's the only one who can make it work. A last-ditch effort. The outpost's interior was a mess of smoke and debris. The old mining equipment had been rigged to function as makeshift defenses, but now it was barely holding together. As Cal carried Era toward the central generator, he couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. He didn't know how long Era could survive without the core's stabilizing energy. What if she doesn't make it? Bennett asked quietly, his voice edged with concern. She will, Cal replied, though even he wasn't sure. Era had done the impossible. She had drawn the full power of the core into herself and repelled the alien invasion. But now the energy was taking its toll. She had pushed herself beyond the limits of endurance. The strain was visible in every movement she made. Cal reached the central chamber where the crystal core lay dormant. Its soft, pulsating glow matched Era's own, but now both were fading. The core needed her, she needed the core. It was their only chance. Stay with me, Cal murmured, carefully lowering Era to the ground near the glowing crystal. Her energy signature flickered like a candle about to go out. He didn't know how much longer she could hold on. Her hand trembled as she reached out toward the core. Her thoughts brushed his mind one last time. We can rest now. No, we can't rest, Cal said firmly. We're not done. Not yet. He knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. Her skin felt cool like the icy winds outside, but he refused to let go. There was still a chance. Era's eyelids fluttered, but her energy levels were dangerously low. Without the core, without her, there was nothing to stop the invaders from returning. If she failed, if she slipped away now, the remnants of humanity scattered across the stars would have no defense. This outpost, this last bastion would fall. The decision. Cal had no choice but to act. He remembered what Era had said, how they had fought together, side by side. She had given everything, but so had he. They had fought for survival, and now, it was his turn to ensure they both made it through. Milo's voice broke through his thoughts. Warning, core power levels dropping. Immediate action required. I know, Cal whispered. He glanced back at Bennett, who stood in the doorway waiting. The other survivors were on edge, unsure what would come next. Bennett, Cal called out, his voice steady. I need you to set up a perimeter. Keep watch. If the aliens regroup, we'll need every second we can get. Bennett nodded without hesitation. Understood. But don't do anything stupid, Cal. You've already pushed her to the edge. Don't go beyond it. I don't have a choice, Cal said, his jaw clenched. I'm not losing her. Bennett paused, his eyes hardening, and then without another word, he turned and left the room. Cal turned back to Era, who had closed her eyes, a faint, peaceful expression on her face. She was so fragile now, and he could feel the weight of every second. Her energy, her light, was dimming, and there was nothing left but to try and save her. Please, Era, he whispered, don't leave me. I can't do this without you. A last chance. Cal made a decision. He placed his hand over Era's chest, aligning it with the crystal core. He could feel its energy pulsing faintly as though it was waiting, anticipating. If there was any chance to save her, it was now. Milo, can you interface with the core? Cal asked, his voice tight. Yes, I can attempt to sync. Warning, this may have unpredictable consequences for both you and Era. I don't care about the consequences, Cal replied. Just do it. The chamber filled with a low hum as the core's energy began to resonate with Era. Cal could feel the warmth of it radiating through her, and for a moment, just a moment, her glow strengthened. But the connection between them was tenuous at best. Era's life force was still waning, and the core's power was too much for her weakened form to handle. Cal clenched his teeth, his heart pounding. I won't let you go, he whispered, his voice breaking. Just as he was about to give in to the overwhelming pressure, a surge of energy shot through the chamber. The core pulsed brightly, and Era's form shimmered with newfound strength. Her body glowed once again, though faintly, as though the core had given her just enough to survive. She gasped, her eyes opening wide. Her violet gaze locked onto Cal's, and in that moment he knew she was back. The dawn of a new beginning. Era slowly sat up, her body still fragile but strong enough to move. She reached out, her hand brushing Cal's cheek, a soft smile on her lips. We survived, she whispered, her voice weak but full of life. Cal's chest tightened with relief. He pulled her into an embrace, holding her as though he might break her if he let go. You did it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave everything. Era's energy was still low, but the core had given her the strength she needed. Together they had beaten the invaders, and together they would rebuild. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. There were more out there, more threats to face, more obstacles to overcome. But Cal knew one thing for certain: they would face them together. And this time they had hope. The sun was rising over Titan's icy surface, casting a pale orange light over the wreckage of the battlefield. It was a new day, and it belonged to them. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.